Why South Sudan? An Every Village podcast where we answer questions about the world's youngest nation. The question of the day is, what does the work look like here in the States? Hey everyone, my name is Tiana Johnston and I'm the host of this podcast called Why South Sudan? Today we are going to answer a really great question. And we have somebody very special in the studio today that I think probably half of Houston might know this person. And his name is Kapp. Hey, Ken.
How are you? Glad to be here.
So good to have you. Okay, the reason that I say half of Houston knows you is because you've done marriage counseling and premarital counseling for a lot of people, including me and my husband, and Andrew and Shayna.
Yeah,
Anybody else?
They were in our class.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit and would love to hear, just share with our audience kind of a little bit about you and how did you get connected to Every Village? Yeah, go ahead.
Cut me off because I may talk too much. I moved to Houston to get a job from Pennsylvania when I graduated from college. And I had the fortunate pleasure of getting a job at Texaco, which eventually became Chevron. And after about 33 years in the energy business, I felt like God was telling me it's time to retire. So I took the leap of faith, and I had the opportunity to come to Every Village. Every Village was a ministry sponsored by First Baptist Church. Cindy and I go to First Baptist Church for many, many, many years. And whenever I retired, I had the opportunity to come to Every Village in 2014. I worked mainly on operations and programs and trip logistics and stuff like that for the first couple of years. And then I had the opportunity, God called me away for a year to go someplace else, and I came back. And in 2018, I started working with the development group, and it's been quite a ride since then.
I was wondering what you actually started on, which is funny that all of us have done trips and we've always handed it off to someone else.
Yeah, there are about 14 arms in each trip as we plan it, and it's very logistically taxing. So I was very happy to hand it off.
Totally. Okay, so you've been with us for 10 years.
Yep.
And then how many trips have you been on?
I have been to South Sudan 3 times. I went in 2014, 2016, and 2019.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Would you say one of them stuck out more than the other?
You know, I don't think you actually, we can't really paint a picture of what South Sudan is like until you go there. You have an expectation of what you think it might be like, but it is totally different. So I have fond memories and some strange memories of each of my trips. I have a little bit of motion sickness issues, so sometimes I was concerned about the small plane, sometimes I was concerned about the drive. And Houston is almost cool compared to South Sudan in March of every year. But it's been a great memory. It was a fantastic experience, and I wouldn't give it up for the world.
I do feel bad that every time, I think probably every time you went, it was the hottest part of the year. I'm like, why do we do that? It's like torture. It's so hot.
Well, and you know, you're sleeping in a tent largely, okay? And we're not used to sleeping when it's 90 degrees outside without air conditioning. There's no air conditioning there, and it just is a challenge. Everything that you do there is a challenge, but it's sort of like a very unglamorous camping trip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love it because it does get us out of our comfort zone and just shows us, one, how privileged we are and how much we desire comfort, but also, too, it's an amazing, I think it plays into the experience that you'll never experience outside.
Right. I wish all of our donors could have the opportunity to go to South Sudan.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. So since you've been to South Sudan, but you work predominantly here in Houston, and I know you've worked different roles, but kind of maybe even answer the question today of what does work look like here in the States, for all of us?
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people know that South Sudan is one of the poorest countries in the world. The United Nations has recently published a report saying that South Sudan is the least developed country in the world, based on many, many criteria like mortality rates, education, and all that. And so I think it's my job in the development realm to go ahead and try to communicate and articulate as much as I possibly can to our donors. And we are very privileged and blessed to live here in the United States. And I feel like it's my job to paint a picture so our donors understand, because most of our donors will probably never get to South Sudan, how difficult things are and how fertile the soil is, so to speak, with regards to the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's easier to share the gospel with a South Sudanese than it is with your neighbor. And it's just an amazing feeling. And when you see how much God has done over the last years, it's phenomenal. And we have a lot more work to do. And I feel like it's my job in the development area to continue to communicate that story.
Mm-hmm. What is something that you really enjoy about being in development, sharing the heart and the mission of every village? What's maybe something you really enjoy?
What I try to do whenever I meet a new donor is I want to sit down and I want to find out what their passions are, okay? And if they have a passion for the lost, then we start clicking as far as, hey, let me tell you what we're doing in South Sudan. And when that donor's eyes light up and I see that we have a connection, it's a really cool thing because I know that they understand what we're trying to do over there. Now, it may not look the same as another country, but this is the way we have to do it in South Sudan, given the fact that they are very hampered by civil unrest. I tell our donors that they're about 75 years behind their neighbors, their neighboring countries. Mm-hmm. And I don't even think the neighboring countries in East Africa understand what goes on inside the borders of South Sudan. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty it shows you how blessed we are to live in the United States whenever you go to South Sudan. And I feel like we have compassionate donors that want to share Christ with our donors, mm-hmm. with our folks in South Sudan as much as possible.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. So I know there's development area or part of the office, but there's also other areas that we focus on too. And I know you mentioned earlier about being, kind of the trips operator.
Yep.
Which we know that Blake is in charge of that. But even going maybe in a little depth of that, like there's a lot of behind the scenes I think a lot of people don't see, even outside of like the development world.
Yeah. I mean, we have a field office in Kampala, Uganda, mm-hmm. and a lot of times our coordination efforts go toward that field office. Trip logistics I'll talk about that for a little bit here. Trip logistics are extremely difficult, as we discussed previously. And to get people in the right place at the right time and the coordination of charter flights, hotels, making sure that the folks going on our trips have the right materials. They need a backpack. And, one of the hardest things about explaining to our folks that go on trips is the idea that when they go into South Sudan, we'll be on a chartered flight, and they only can take 22 pounds of stuff in their backpack, okay? And it is very strict with regards to that weight, and we've seen people having to unload their backpacks because the charter flight weighs you with your backpack and without your backpack. And if it's more than 22 pounds, guess what? You're taking stuff out of your bag. So that's always a hard part, to make sure people understand that and spend a lot of time making sure that there's not any confusion at that terminal. There are visa issues, there are passport issues, just making sure that everything lines up, because if there's one little hiccup, it causes a big disruption in the whole trip itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other thing I've done in the past is, as we were drilling wells and now repairing wells, it was important to keep track of which money was going toward which well, so we could communicate back to our donor, hey, your money has gone to fix this well in this area, in mm-hmm. Tanj or Mvola or wherever, or this money has been used to buy radios that went into this area. And I think that connects the donor with South Sudan as much as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I would say 2 fun facts about Ken Kapp that maybe some of you might know is that he is the most detail-oriented when it comes to spreadsheets. Oh my goodness. I mean, that is one thing. I think as a supporter, you should feel very encouraged that it is very organized and up to like the cent. He knows where everything is. And so he definitely keeps us very, always walking in integrity, accountability, and everything. So that is a very good thing about Ken Kapp.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yes.
Don't say anything to my wife about that.
Yeah. So kind of now, I guess, going back to development side. And so even maybe for development, I think even sharing with our listeners kind of what all entails with development. Oh, sorry. That was my other fun fact about Kapp. Sorry,
Okay.
I forgot that one. Was because many of our listeners have actually received a handwritten note from Ken personally thanking them, because he's very intentional with caring for people, and I think that is something that he's really shared and encouraged us on the development team. But even sharing with our listeners currently, like what all goes into development.
Yeah, it can go many different ways. Let me start with the idea that we have like a 5K or we have some sort of event. We send an email out and it sparks the Holy Spirit's working in that donor's mind and heart, and they contact us and they say, hey, I'd like to find out more. And of course, any of us on the development team will go ahead and want to meet, coffee, lunch, whatever, to communicate what's going on. That's great, okay? And again, we're looking for people that have a similar passion for the lost, passion for East Africa, and that seems to be the best connection. There are other times whenever we we have like a board member or a donor who may have some other folks that are like-minded and have interest in East Africa or the lost. And I would be happy, or anybody on the development team would be happy to contact them and say, hey, would you like to sit down and talk for coffee? We typically take like a PowerPoint presentation, communicate what's going on, show them our dashboard from our website, whatever like that, to kind of spark the interest. A lot of it is awareness, too. A lot of people don't know what Every Village is. Some people think we're living water because we drill wells, okay, which is great, but we're not living water. Living water is not even in South Sudan. And so we do a lot of awareness things where one of the folks on the team, we may go talk to like a chapel at a private school, or we may address a youth group at a church, anything like that. We're just trying to make sure that our name is known far and wide. We're not just a Houston ministry. There's no reason why people in Idaho or Montana would be able to find out about us and know about us. So we try to make sure that our tentacles are as far-reaching as possible, because it's really important what we're doing over there.
I mean, you have been praying for a long time for just a sweet lady from Muscatine, Iowa.
Yes, there is a widow in Muscatine, Iowa, I know that would love to send us $5 a month. We just have to find her.
And if it's you listening to this podcast, you've been prayed for a very long time.
Yes.
I know. So actually recently, so you were development director, and then you've transitioned to development because we have a new development director.
Yes.
That's in Colorado Springs, which is exciting. Kind of what is your vision, I guess, even with, handing the baton over to Tim?
Yeah. I hate to tell you this, but I'm the oldest one at Every Village by 27 years. So I'm the old guy on the staff. And
he has the biggest muscles.
It's about time for me to start thinking about retirement. And so my wife and I have been wanting to travel quite a bit. And so a couple years ago, I talked with Andrew and I said, hey, I think it's time that I maybe kind of hang it up. And it's really important that we find the right person. And the Lord's brought us the right person in Tim, and we're really excited to have him on board. And I want to hang with the organization long enough to get Tim onboarded and make sure he has lots of success before Cindy and I head to New Zealand or Australia or wherever.
Okay, yes. I'm hoping maybe the next several years just means you'll take more vacations than fully leaving. But it has been a joy for sure, and you've taught me a lot, and I'm very, very grateful.
Right.
So I know we are a small team here in the Houston office, but we're really a family. We support each other. We do this arm in arm, and so I'm just really thankful.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing today. It was fun having you on.
Sure, great. Thank you very much. Take care.
All right, so I invite everyone back to our next episode as we answer the question, what is a leper colony?